At 1:47 a.m. on February 1st, 2026, the doorbell camera at Nancy Guthrie's front door went dark. That is where every video about this case begins. That is the moment everyone has been analyzing, frame by frame, for weeks. The masked figure, the backpack, the foliage covering the lens. That moment has been dissected more than almost any other piece of evidence in this investigation. But that moment is not where this story begins. This story begins 3 hours and 57 minutes earlier, at 9:50 p.m. on January 31st, when a garage door closed in the Catalina Foothills of Tucson, Arizona. And what happened in the house on the other side of that door? In the nearly 4 hours between that garage door closing and that camera going dark, has never been publicly explained. Not once, not by law enforcement, not by any source on record. The investigation has generated tens of thousands of tips, hundreds of hours of press coverage, and a multi-agency federal response that spans 2 countries. And the 4 hours at the center of it all remain, as of this recording, a documented gap that nobody has filled. Here is what we know from the confirmed record. According to a person familiar with the investigation who spoke to the Associated Press on February 3rd, investigators found signs of forced entry at Nancy Guthrie's home. That same AP source said investigators also found specific evidence inside the home, showing there was a nighttime kidnapping. Sheriff Chris Nanos, when asked directly about forced entry, did not confirm it, but he did not deny it either. What he said was this: "We are not discussing that at all, whether it is forced entry or not forced entry." He also told reporters, "There were other things at the scene that indicate that she did not leave on her own. Something happened inside that house. The evidence confirms it. The question that has not been answered publicly is when it happened. Because if forced entry and evidence of nighttime kidnapping were found inside the home, and the camera was not disabled until 1:47 a.m., then everything that happened between 9:50 p.m. and that camera going dark is the question that matters most in this investigation. Unsolved America is going to go into those 4 hours today. We are going to place every verified piece of forensic evidence against the confirmed timeline, and ask the question clearly: what do we actually know about what happened inside that house, and what does the silence around it tell us? Stay with us. Nancy Guthrie had lived in her Catalina Foothills home for decades. The house was built in 1969, sits on approximately 1 acre of desert land, and is estimated to be worth around $1.1 million, according to property records cited by Hello Magazine. It is a brick house with a gravel driveway and a yard covered in prickly pear, cactus, and saguaro. The saguaro cacti, according to the Associated Press, tower above the roofline. Wispy trees partially block the view of the front door from the street. The neighborhood itself is the kind of place people choose deliberately. The Associated Press described it as quiet and mostly dark at night, lit mainly by car headlights, with homes spaced far apart. Long driveways, front gates, and desert plants provide a buffer from the winding streets. CNN described what happens to the community after sunset. Come nightfall, the unincorporated community north of Tucson, Arizona, is plunged into secluded darkness. There are no streetlights. According to CBS News, local laws prohibit them to reduce light pollution. The darkness that drew Nancy's family to the area after her husband died is the same darkness that made the house invisible from the street after 9:50 p.m. Nancy had lived alone since her children grew up. She had high blood pressure, a pacemaker, and heart issues, according to audio from a sheriff's dispatcher speaking with deputies during the early search. Sheriff Nano said publicly that she could not walk 50 yards by herself. She required daily heart medication and, according to Nanos, going without it could become fatal within 24 hours. Every evening, she removed her hearing aids before bed. Without them, she could hear nothing. She had a Nest doorbell camera mounted at her front door. It could detect motion. It could display a live feed on a screen inside the house. It did not have an active cloud subscription, which meant it was not saving footage to any server. If someone approached the house without pressing the doorbell button, there would be no record of it at all. On the evening of January 31st, Nancy took an Uber to Annie and Tommaso Cione's home at 5:32 p.m. for dinner. They ate together, played games, the kind of Saturday night that had happened dozens of times before. At 9:48 p.m., the garage door opened. At 9:50 p.m., it closed. Tommaso Cione has said he watched to make sure she was inside. Then he drove the 4 miles back to his own house. That is the last moment anyone can confirm from an independent source. No camera recorded Nancy walking from the garage into the house. The only independent confirmation that she entered the property is the timestamp of the garage door closing. Everything else about what happened inside that house, from 9:50 p.m. forward, comes from no confirmed record at all. The house was dark. The street was dark. Nobody called. Nobody texted. Nobody drove 4 miles to check on an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker who was about to remove her hearing aids and go to sleep alone in the desert. When investigators arrived the following day, the house looked exactly as it should have, except for one thing. Nancy was gone, and everything that belonged to her, her wallet, her car, her cell phone, her hearing aids, and her heart medication, was still there. Hooked. The morning of February 1st began the way it always did, except Nancy Guthrie did not show up for her weekly virtual church service. Her close friend waited. Nancy was never late. The friend called. No answer. She reached Annie. Annie went to the house with family members. They arrived at approximately 11:56 a.m. They searched the house and the surrounding property. They found no sign of her. At 12:03 p.m., they called 911. Pima County Sheriff's Department patrol arrived at 12:15 p.m. What they found inside the house, and on the front porch outside it, became the foundation of everything that followed. On the front porch, there was blood. Forensic testing confirmed it belonged to Nancy Guthrie. Sheriff Nanos described the blood as minimal. But Paulette Sutton, a bloodstain pattern analysis expert who retired from the Shelby County Medical Examiner's Office after more than 4 decades in the field, analyzed the evidence and told Newsweek what it indicated. It is what we call a drip trail, which means it is a continuous source of blood dripping from an object or from a person. She added something that matters for the question of timing. There is not a lot of disturbance that I could see in that trail, as if there was a struggle going on in that particular location. A drip trail without significant disturbance. Retired FBI Special Agent and Criminal Investigator Gregory Vecchi confirmed to Newsweek. She was bleeding. I mean, you certainly can say that. At least enough injury to cause a very clear blood trail. According to a law enforcement source cited by CBS News, blood was also found inside the home. Sheriff Nanos did not confirm this detail specifically, but he said consistently, there were other things at the scene that indicate that she did not leave on her own. The homicide team was brought in immediately. By the following day, Nanos told reporters, "We do not see this as a search mission so much as it is a crime scene." And then there is the forced entry. A person familiar with the investigation told the Associated Press on February 3rd that investigators found signs of forced entry at Nancy Guthrie's home. That same source told AP that investigators also found specific evidence in the home showing there was a nighttime kidnapping. When Sheriff Nanos was asked directly about forced entry at a press conference, he responded, "I have no clue where that comes from. We have been very consistent. We are not discussing that at all, whether it is forced entry or not forced entry." He did not say it did not happen. He said the department would not address it. Take those 3 elements together. A blood trail on the front porch consistent with a person bleeding while moving, without major signs of a struggle at that location. Evidence of forced entry, confirmed by an AP source and not denied by the sheriff. Specific evidence inside the home, confirmed by that same AP source, showing a nighttime kidnapping occurred, and a woman who could not walk 50 yards by herself, who wore hearing aids she would have removed before bed, who took evening medication she never reached. If you were building a timeline from the forensic evidence alone, what time do you think the crime actually began? Leave your answer in the comments, because the answer to that question changes everything about how investigators should be looking at this case. Here's where the timeline begins to fracture. Law enforcement and national media have focused the investigation, almost entirely, on what happened starting at 1:47 a.m. The masked figure, the camera, the pacemaker stopped at 2:28. That 41-minute window between the camera going dark and the device losing its signal has been treated as the core of the crime. But the forensic and physical evidence does not begin at 1:47 a.m. It begins somewhere in the 4 hours before. The doorbell camera was disabled at 1:47 a.m. in a very specific way. According to FBI Director Kash Patel, the individual first attempted to knock the device off its mount with light taps. When that failed, he covered the lens with a piece of foliage pulled from a potted plant FBI behavioral analysts who reviewed the footage noted that this specific behavior, covering rather than destroying, suggested a purpose. The individual did not want Nancy to see a masked face on her indoor display screen and refused to open the door. He needed the door to open. He needed her unaware. Retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffendafer told Newsweek that in the brief clip of the individual approaching, he moved with his head down directly toward the camera without hesitation. Head down and beelines toward that camera. They knew exactly where that camera was. She described that as insider information. But here is the question that the 1:47 a.m. focus has obscured. If the individual who came to the door at 1:47 a.m. knew exactly where the camera was, did he also know how to avoid it during the preceding 4 hours? The camera covered the front door. It did not cover the entire property. According to ABC News, citing law enforcement sources, investigators recovered additional thumbnail images from cameras positioned at the pool, the backyard, and the side yard of the home. Those images showed a number of individuals on the property during an unspecified period before the abduction. But those same cameras, according to a source described by ABC News as finding the situation odd, recorded nothing on the night Nancy disappeared. The cameras that had been working before that night recorded nothing on that specific night. That is the detail that has received almost no coverage in national media. The neighborhood provided cover for everything that happened. CBS News confirmed there are no streetlights in the Catalina Foothills because local laws prohibit them to minimize light pollution. The homes are separated by acres of desert. Jim Mason, a longtime commander of a search and rescue operation in Maricopa County, told the Associated Press that the desert terrain makes searching for missing people extraordinarily difficult. Some of it is so thick you cannot drive through it. Retired FBI agent Coffendafer described the property in her analysis to Newsweek. These are acre to 3-acre plots. This house, if you look at it from the camera vantage, is stuck way back in there with a lot of cactus and other foliage around it. A person who knew the layout of that property, who knew there were no street lights, who knew the cameras could be avoided for 4 hours without any record, who knew Nancy removed her hearing aids before bed, who knew her medication was on the counter and not yet taken, and who chose to come to the front door at 1:47 a.m. rather than earlier. That person was not discovering the property for the first time. The FBI recognized this. Investigators were asking Nancy's neighbors in March 2026 for surveillance footage from January 11th and January 24th, 2 Saturday evenings, approximately 3 weeks and 1 week before Nancy disappeared. Someone had been there before. Someone had been watching. The FBI also deployed its Cellular Analysis Survey Team, known as CAST, one of the most specialized digital forensics units in federal law enforcement. Retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Jason Pack told Fox News Digital, "They have data, mountains of it. Names have surfaced and been evaluated. Some have been cleared. Others may still be in play in ways we are not seeing publicly. Cell phones that were active in the area during those 4 hours will have left records. Every device that connected to a tower, every Bluetooth signal that passed through that neighborhood between 9:50 p.m. and 2:28 a.m. is data that CAS was specifically deployed to analyze. The 4 hours between the garage door closing and the camera going dark are not empty. They are full of evidence that has not been made public. Blood, forced entry, DNA inside the house that does not match any profile in the FBI database. Cameras that recorded activity on prior nights and nothing on this one. Cell tower data that investigators describe as mountains. And a woman alone in a dark house in the desert who never took her evening medication. Unsolved America covers active cases by placing every verified piece of evidence in its confirmed position and asking the questions that the evidence demands. That is the standard we hold every video to, regardless of how uncomfortable the questions are. If that is the kind of coverage you want to follow, subscribe right now, because the next part of this video is where those 4 hours begin to speak. Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker sends a Bluetooth signal every 2 to 3 minutes. It has been doing that since before she disappeared. According to CBS News, citing cybersecurity expert Dave Kennedy, the device continuously scans and broadcasts a unique MAC address, a device identifier that is specific to her pacemaker alone. The FBI recognized early in the investigation that this signal, if Nancy was still alive and within detection range, could pinpoint her location. Within the first week, law enforcement mounted a signal sniffer device on the skids of a Pima County Sheriff's Department helicopter and began flying slow, low-altitude grid patterns over the Tucson area. CBS News confirmed the deployment through law enforcement sources. Fox News Digital spotted one of those helicopters flying near Nancy's home as early as February 4th, just 3 days after she disappeared. President Trump, when briefed on the technology, criticized the public disclosure of it. He told reporters, "I did not like when they talked about going after the pacemaker before they even started going after it. If in fact they could do it that way, the person would say, well, I'm not going to let that happen." His concern was not about the technology. It was about the fact that whoever was holding Nancy had now been told, through national media coverage, that a pacemaker signal could be used to find her. That detail matters for understanding the 4 hours. Nancy's pacemaker was syncing to her iPhone throughout the evening of January 31st. It was still syncing when she arrived at Annie and Tommaso's house at 5:32 p.m. It was still syncing when she got into the car at 9:48 p.m. And it kept syncing after the garage door closed at 9:50 p.m. For 3 hours and 38 minutes after that garage door closed, Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker was recording data. Every 2 to 3 minutes, it sent a signal. That signal went to her phone, and her phone, which was found on the nightstand the next morning, received every one of those signals right up until 2:28 a.m., when they stopped. What those 3.5 hours of pacemaker data might show about her heart rate, about stress responses, about any physiological event that occurred inside that house during those 4 hours, has not been made public. Investigators have not said whether that data has been analyzed, what it showed, or whether it is relevant to their understanding of when the crime actually began. But the data exists. It was collected automatically, and it covers almost the entire window of those 4 hours that nobody has explained. The DNA found inside the house adds another layer. CNN's chief law enforcement analyst, John Miller, describing the investigation at the 1-month mark, said this: "You have got DNA from inside the house and DNA from outside, which may or may not be connected to the crime, that do not register in CODIS. 2 separate collections, one from outside, on or near the porch where the blood trail was found, one from inside the house itself, neither matching anyone in the FBI's National Criminal Database." Miller added the broader implication of that. Every time someone is arrested on a felony charge somewhere and that data is loaded into CODIS, that is one more chance for a match. The DNA is waiting for a name, but it is there. It was left there. Someone who had never been arrested was inside Nancy Guthrie's home and left biological material that investigators recovered and processed. The question of when that person was inside the home during those 4 hours is the question that the current public record cannot answer. The blood trail on the front porch showed a drip pattern without major signs of a struggle at that specific location. The forced entry evidence was confirmed by an AP source. The nighttime kidnapping evidence was confirmed by the same source. But the public record does not say whether forced entry occurred at 1:47 a.m. or at 10:15 p.m. or at any specific moment in the 4-hour window. That distinction is not a minor detail. It is the difference between a crime that began when the camera went dark and a crime that was already underway while most people following this case were asleep and unaware that anything had happened at all. The FBI was asking Nancy's neighbors about 2 specific Saturday evenings in January. January 11th, between 9 p.m. and midnight. January 24th, the Saturday 1 week before Nancy disappeared. Both requests were for the same time window. Late evening, the hours when Nancy would have been returning home after dinner with family. Retired FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole told CNN that investigators in targeted abduction cases need to rule out whether the perpetrator visited the neighborhood before the crime. Investigators have to rule out that the suspect did not go to a neighbor's house first in the days and weeks leading up to the incident. A second former FBI official told CNN, "Hopefully they are looking for somebody who has been there several times for casing purposes. You will have a list of all the vehicles owned by people within that neighborhood. What you are looking for are vehicles that do not belong there. Someone had been there before January 31st. Someone had stood in that dark neighborhood, under those dark streets, and watched a routine repeat itself on Saturday after Saturday until they understood exactly how it worked and exactly when to move." Sheriff Nanos confirmed to NBC News in early March that investigators believe the kidnapping was targeted and that they believe they know the motive. He declined to share what the motive is, But the word targeted, in the context of everything the confirmed record shows about those 4 hours, carries a specific weight. A targeted crime requires preparation. Preparation requires knowledge. Knowledge requires access, observation, or both. And the 4 hours between the garage door closing and the camera going dark are the hours during which that preparation was put into use. The backpack the suspect carried has been confirmed as a 2.5-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack sold exclusively at Walmart. The FBI has been working with Walmart management to develop leads from that purchase, according to the Associated Press. Investigators also believe the suspect's clothing and face mask may have been purchased at Walmart, though those items are not exclusive to that retailer. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed that the suspect was armed, carrying what appeared to be a gun placed in a holster. By February 12th, based on enhanced forensic analysis of the doorbell camera footage by the FBI's Operational Technology Division, investigators had added one new physical detail to the suspect description: a black mustache, visible in the brief window before the lens was covered. Every physical detail the FBI has released points toward a real person who made real purchases, made real decisions, and moved through a real neighborhood in the desert north of Tucson. That person arrived at the front door at 1:47 a.m. What happened between 9:50 p.m. and that moment is still, as of this recording, a gap in the public record that no official source has filled. Hookend. This is where every thread in those 4 hours needs to be laid out in a single frame, not to reach a conclusion, but to show exactly what the shape of the unanswered question looks like when you place all the confirmed evidence together. At 9:50 p.m., the garage door closed. Nancy was inside the house, or the person who dropped her off believed she was inside the house. Her heart medication was on the kitchen counter. She had 5 to 15 minutes before her evening dose was due. The medication was found completely untouched the following morning. She did not take it. The AP source confirmed forced entry. The AP source confirmed specific evidence of a nighttime kidnapping inside the home. Sheriff Nanos confirmed there were things at the scene indicating she did not leave on her own. He said she could not walk 50 yards by herself. He said she was of sound mind. She was, by every account from people who knew her, a woman who would not have forgotten her evening heart medication without a reason. DNA was found inside the house. It does not match anyone in the FBI criminal database. It does not match Nancy. It does not match people in close contact with her. It came from someone who was inside that house and left biological material behind. Investigators have submitted it for genealogical testing, the same technique that has solved several high-profile cold cases in recent years, by identifying relatives of unknown suspects and working backward toward a confirmed identity. The cameras positioned at the backyard, the pool area, and the side of the property had recorded activity on prior occasions, according to ABC News citing law enforcement sources. The same cameras recorded nothing on the night Nancy disappeared. A source familiar with the investigation described that as, in their word, odd. The pacemaker recorded data every 2 to 3 minutes from the moment Nancy arrived home until 2:28 a.m., when it went silent. 3.5 hours of physiological data covering almost the entire window of those 4 hours. That data has not been publicly addressed by investigators. The blood on the front porch was confirmed as a drip trail, consistent with a person bleeding while moving, without major signs of struggle at that specific location. Blood was also found inside the home, according to a CBS News law enforcement source. And at 1:47 a.m., a man with a black mustache, wearing a ski mask, a black jacket, gloves, and a holstered firearm, carrying a Walmart backpack, approached the front door of the house. He knew exactly where the camera was. He moved toward it without hesitation. He covered it carefully and deliberately. Then the doorbell camera footage that the FBI later recovered, through what Director Patel described as previously inaccessible imaging, picked up what happened at the front door. 4 hours, blood, forced entry, DNA from an unknown person, a medication that was never reached, cameras that went dark on one specific night, and a man with a plan who arrived at 1:47 inches the morning because whatever he needed to do required that he be there then. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old. She raised 3 children alone after her husband died of a heart attack when she was 46. She worked at the University of Arizona for nearly 20 years. She attended virtual church every Sunday morning without fail. Savannah Guthrie said of her mother in 2022, "She has met unthinkable challenges in her life with grit, without self-pity, with determination, and always with unshakable faith. She was a person with a life. She was a person with a routine, a home, a family, and a medication she took every night without fail. Those 4 hours belonged to her. Whatever happened in that house happened to her. And the investigation that will eventually answer what happened in those hours is still running. The pacemaker is still sending signals. Someone out there recognizes the man with the black mustache and the Walmart backpack. Someone knows what those 4 hours held. If you have someone in your life who is elderly and living alone, please share this video with them or with someone who loves them. Not because it will frighten them, but because the next part of this video has 3 specific things that those 4 hours teach us about keeping people safe. And those things are actionable right now. Tonight, before anything else happens. As of March 18th, 2026, this is the confirmed state of the investigation. Nancy Guthrie has not been found. No suspect has been publicly named. No arrest has been made. The FBI reward stands at $100,000. The Guthrie family reward stands at $1 million. Billboards carrying the suspect's image are running in 7 cities. The tip lines remain open. The Pima County Sheriff at 520-351-4900 and the FBI at 1800-CALL-FBI. DNA from inside the house is being processed through genealogical testing. DNA from gloves found at the scene did not match the FBI criminal database and is also being processed. A signal sniffer has been deployed on law enforcement helicopters in an attempt to detect the pacemaker's Bluetooth signal. The FBI has contacted authorities in Mexico. The investigation has expanded geographically beyond Arizona. A multi-agency task force with detectives from Pima County formerly assigned to the FBI's Tucson field office continues to work the case. The 4 hours between the garage door closing and the camera going dark remain the central unresolved question in the public record. Forced entry was confirmed by an AP source. Nighttime kidnapping evidence inside the home was confirmed by the same source. The sheriff has declined to discuss those details further. The specific timing of the forced entry, whether it occurred at the beginning of those 4 hours or closer to 1:47 a.m., has never been addressed publicly by any law enforcement official. CNN analyst John Miller, at the 1-month mark, described the investigation's status with precision. There is still plenty of science that is out that has not come back yet. There are still investigators working leads that they are not finished with. He added, "If we are having this conversation a year and a half from now, that would be a cold case. But right now, the current nature is pretty opaque, so we cannot say it has gone cold." Not cold, opaque. Those are the 2 words that describe those 4 hours, as well as anything else in this case. Here are 3 things the 4 hours of this case teach us, and they are worth taking seriously because they apply to people you might know right now. The first is about the check-in window. Nobody contacted Nancy Guthrie between 9:50 p.m. and the following morning. That was not negligence. It was a normal Saturday night, but a single text at 10:30 p.m., something as simple as a check-in after she got home, would have established a baseline. If she did not respond, someone would have known within minutes rather than 12 hours. For anyone you love who lives alone and returns home after dark, a check-in window is not surveillance. It is a 2-sentence text and a reasonable expectation of a 2-word response. It is the difference between knowing something is wrong at 10:31 p.m. and not knowing until noon the following day. The second is about what a cloud subscription actually means. The Nest camera at Nancy Guthrie's front door could detect motion. It could display a live feed. It could not save footage to any server because there was no active subscription. If that subscription had been active, the 4 hours between 9:50 p.m. and 1:47 a.m. would not be a gap. They would be a record. The footage from those hours might have identified the suspect, established the exact timing of the forced entry, and changed the entire trajectory of the investigation. The subscription costs approximately $10 a month. The gap it would have filled is the central unresolved question in one of the most intensively investigated missing persons cases in recent American history. The third is about medical alert devices in isolated environments. Nancy lived in a neighborhood with no streetlights, houses separated by acres of desert, and no neighbors close enough to hear anything at night. In that environment, a medical alert device that operates independently of internet, phone connectivity, and hearing aids is the only tool that can reach the outside world when nothing else can. It does not require the person wearing it to speak. It does not require them to reach a phone. It does not require them to know something has gone wrong. It requires only that something has gone wrong with their body, and it sends a signal automatically. For a person with a pacemaker, living alone, in an isolated desert home, that device is not a convenience. It is the only redundancy that covers the scenario where every other layer of contact has been cut off. On December 25th, 2025, Nancy Guthrie posted a photograph of her family to her Facebook page. Tommaso stood next to her, holding a black dog. The whole family was wearing matching pajamas. She wrote 4 words beneath the photo: "Merry Christmas, sweet ones." That photograph is still there. Her family has not taken it down. Somewhere between that photograph and the morning of February 1st, something happened in a house in the desert. The investigation is still running. The pacemaker is still transmitting, if Nancy is still alive. The tip lines are open. The reward is real. One call from one person who recognizes the man with the black mustache and the Walmart backpack can change everything. If this video gave you a clearer picture of what those 4 hours actually contain, please hit like so more people following this case can find it. Subscribe to Unsolved America so you do not miss the next update. And the next video we are building is going to ask the question that follows directly from everything we covered today. Investigators say they know the motive, and they will not say what it is. What does law enforcement silence about motive actually protect? And what does it tell us about where this case is heading?